My name's Steven Sheil. I'm the writer-director of Mum and Dad, which is a brand new British horror film that's coming out on Boxing Day this year, December the 26th. It's brutal and perverse and blackly comic film in some respects about a murderous family who live in a house at the end of an airport runway and bring people back to the house to torture and kill. Weird, it's not actually inspired by Fred West. It's one of those things where I started writing the story, and obviously you start writing a story that's about a murderous family, a sort of suburban family, and obviously that Fred and Rose West are in your mind because it's in everybody's mind, that story, and the kind of public consciousness. But it wasn't a kind of intentional thing to write let's do a kind of Fred and Rose West exploitation film. I mean, I knew that there would always be kind of comparisons to that, but it wasn't anything that I kind of deliberately drew on. I didn't kind of sit down and read a load of Fred and Rose West, reports or anything. So I think there's an element of that in there, but it wasn't actually inspired by. I think the inspiration came from essentially wanting to do a really low-budget horror film, but also a horror film like something that I would want to go and see. And I guess I've been watching a lot of quite sleazy sort of 70s stuff, including quite a lot of Pete Walker, so things like Frightmare and House of Whipcord kind of really sort of fed into the idea, and Mumsy, Nanny, Sonny and Girly, and they're all kind of films about kind of fucked up families and parents, and it's kind of like an archetypal kind of horror story really, that idea of the fucked up family. You've got like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Hills Have Eyes and things like that, where you've got different kind of variations in an American sense, but there hadn't really been a British version of that for years, and so that kind of fed into it. I had the title I kind of pretty much nicked from a kind of 1940s American exploitation film called Mom and Dad, which wasn't a horror film, but it was kind of a real kind of, so but I thought that would be a great title for a horror film, Mum and Dad. There was a kind of Philip Larkin quote in my head about Mum and Dad, they fuck you up, so that kind of worked. And then I grew up next to Heathrow Airport, so I was approached by kind of Film London to put in for this microwave scheme. They funded it, and because it kind of needed to be London set, I kind of put the two things together really, the Heathrow Airport setting and the messed up family, and it kind of all came from there really. It's almost like there's a whole kind of period of British cinema that's kind of been a bit kind of excised from the kind of conventional kind of history books of cinema really, because it's a bit too sleazy, a bit too grim, and there's kind of those kind of horror films, and there's also it's an era where there are loads of kind of quite grim sort of sex comedies starring kind of stalwarts of British TV and cinema, and they were always quite sleazy and really sort of quite drab looking in a way in terms of like the design of them, but there's something quite fascinating in them as a kind of sort of document of the time, and also kind of, like I said, I think a lot of people tend to think of like British horror, and they always kind of hark back to Hammer and Amicus and those kind of people, and they ignore a whole kind of stretch of British horror where it's it came out of more kind of like exploitation and sexploitation roots, so people like Pete Walker came from that side. So and that kind of slight kind of sleaziness, I guess, was something that I thought hadn't been around for a while, and it's something that I kind of like in that from that kind of era. The film cost so little money; it was only made for $100 grand, and I just, one thing I didn't want it to be was polite. I didn't want to make a polite film at all. I wanted to make something that would not. It's not that I wanted to intentionally cause offence or anything, but I didn't want to have those kind of restrictions of thinking, oh no, I must kind of tone that down. So I pretty much went for it with the script and with the with the making of it. suppose I always say that I don't think that there's anything that you can't show, but I think you as a filmmaker have a kind of idea about, you know, you have to ask yourself, why do I want to show that, and what am I saying to an audience with it? Yeah, so I don't think there's subject matter or an image that you cannot show, but I just think you as a filmmaker think, well, yeah, do I need to show this? Why am I showing it? What effect do I want it to produce? And also, what's the sort of, I guess, you know, the worldview or the politics that are coming through that. You know, if I show this, what effect will it have on an audience, and what will it make an audience think? So I think that always comes into it. So I think you can. I don't think you. I think you kind of self-censor yourself anyway in terms of what you would want to see. But like I said, I think there's ways of doing pretty much anything on screen, and there should be. I don't think there should be that kind of. I think, you know, it should be pretty uncensored what kind of goes out there. On December the 26th, we're doing an all-platform release, the first all-platform release, which is going to be theatrical, pay-per-view TV, and DVD all on the same day, which will be the first time that's happened. It's a bit of a kind of test case. It's been slightly kind of controversial with some people because they don't want to see that window closed, you know, between cinema and DVD. But I think with Revolver, they're looking at this kind of film and thinking, right, the main sales for this kind of film are going to be on DVD, and they want to offer the maximum amount of choice so that people who would normally buy it on DVD have the choice to go and see it on cinema, have the choice to see it on pay-per-view TV. They're not suggesting that it's a model for all cinema. It's not going to happen with Quantum of Solace or you know, the next Batman film. But for a film at this scale and in this genre, I think they feel that it's a good way of offering the audience choice. But also, I mean, it means that there's one kind of big push for the film really, which is all based around Boxing Day.